This conference will now be recorded.
Greetings, everyone. May the Lord bless this session. Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength, my rock, my redeemer. This session is session number 11 in the Connect the Dots sessions that I'm putting together. I hope you're enjoying them. I hope they help you. I hope they help organize different terms and ideas through the Bible. And as you listen to these and kind of make up your own version of these, I would encourage that. Session number 11, we're going to look at an aspect of the return of Christ that we call the cloud coming. We call it the cloud coming because, of course, that's the direction he comes from. And a lot of verses in the Bible deal with this. All ancient peoples had their various idol gods, and many of those gods were the god of the heavens, or the god of the sky, the god of thunder, the god of lightning, the god of storms, the god of wind, the god of the sun and the moon. And of course, the clouds are connected with all of these. And God is basically saying, knowing that they would do this with their false gods, that he is the God of the clouds. He is the God of the heavens. He is the God of the universe. Everything above us, beneath us, is his. He created it. But we're often encouraged to look up, lift up our heads. Our redemption draws nigh. As we look up, first thing, or one of the first things we see are clouds. So this becomes connected with the return of Christ and us meeting him in the clouds. But we need to lay the foundation from the Old Testament, as we're trying to do with all of these. I hope these sessions are being a blessing to you. They're intended to help you understand that these terms and phrases and ideas usually have their roots in the Old Testament, often in Moses, and then through the Psalms and through the prophets into the New Testament. So that by the time the New Testament writers grab hold of them and include them in their writings, these ideas are already well known. They have a background, they have a foundation. They're not just pulling them out of thin air to use them in their New Testament writings. And the same thing with the cloud aspect of the return of Christ. And all of these that we will look at really have their root idea in the cloud, pillar of cloud, uh, directing Israel out of Egypt to the promised land. And that cloud was a protector. That cloud was the heat of summer. It would give them shade. That cloud led them, protected them, guided them, just like the pillar of fire at night that gave not only light but heat in the cold Arabian desert winters. So the pillar idea, later applied to the return of Christ, carries the same idea that it's God. He's in the sky. He's powerful. He's there to gather us, to protect us, to lead us. And so we need to start. First place I'll start on this is Deuteronomy chapter 33. As I've said many times, different lessons and sermons, the final chapters of Deuteronomy are extremely important. They're both directed to the people of Israel at that time, preparing to enter the promised land, but they are also very prophetic, reaching out into the distant future, into the end times and return of Christ. In Deuteronomy chapter 33, this is Moses' final blessing on them before his death. It says in Deuteronomy 33 and 26, there is no God, or there is no one like the God of Jeshurun, who rides the heavens to help you, and in his excellency on the clouds. Now, they had been exposed to that cloud, that pillar of cloud, for 40 years now. So they understood exactly what that cloud would represent: the protection, the guidance, the leadership of God Himself, who directed that cloud, and His presence within that. But this idea of He rides the heavens. This is going to be picked up later, uh, to where the Messiah, Christ, it actually can be identified as the cloud rider, or the one who rides the clouds. This combines both ideas, who rides the heavens to help you, and in his excellency on the clouds. So this gives us a little foundation to build on. We'll go to Psalm 68 and verse 34. And the writer there speaks about clouds. And this is a Psalm of David, which almost makes it messianic in itself, because so much of David's Psalms have messianic qualities about them. Psalm 68 and verse 33 and 34. To him who rides on the heaven, so this really ties back to Deuteronomy 33:26. To him who rides on the heaven of heavens, which were of old, indeed he sends out his voice, his mighty voice. So what jumps out at you right there? His mighty voice. 1 Thessalonians 4:16, doesn't it? Ascribe strength to God. His excellence is over Israel, and his strength is in the clouds. So we're building this little idea of God's presence in the clouds. And earlier in that same chapter, 68 and 4, sing to God, sing praises to his name, extol him who rides on the clouds, the cloud rider. By his name, Yah, or Yahweh, shortened version of it, and rejoice before him. So the idea of God in the clouds. So not just above us and not just above the clouds, but in the clouds, in the sense that the clouds were created by him. He's coming in the clouds, and he surrounds us with his presence. Psalm 104 and verse 3. He lays the beams of his upper chambers in the waters, who makes the clouds his chariot. Again, this idea of riding on the clouds. Who walks on the wings of the wind. So, very dramatic, visual, pictorial description of the Lord riding among the clouds. And this foundation needs to be laid to really add a beautiful dimension to the New Testament verses about Christ coming on the clouds. And without doing this, you miss a lot of what the New Testament deals with on this subject. Then we go to Brother Isaiah, in Isaiah 19 and verse 1. The burden against Egypt, behold, the Lord rides on a swift cloud. It really is a good visual, isn't it? And will come into Egypt. The idols of Egypt will totter at his presence, and the heart of Egypt will melt in its midst. And then we go to that famous prophetic passage in Daniel chapter 7, we like to refer to so much. And in verse 13, Daniel 7:13, I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, so Christ. This is where Christ grabs this term, Son of Man, and applies it to himself more than any other descriptive term or name. He calls himself the Son of Man. Others did not call him that, but he called himself that. And every time he used it, over 80 times in the four Gospels, we need to think of this verse. He's thinking of Daniel 7:13 when he applies it to himself. One like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. So this is really where it focuses itself, where it condenses itself into the direct language of the New Testament. One like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. Jesus refers to this verse in Matthew 26:64 that we'll read in just a few minutes. He comes to the Ancient of Days. That's his Father. They brought him near before him. To him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom the one that will not be destroyed. So Daniel 7:13, more than any other passage in the Old Testament, although the others of them did lay a good foundation and do have a reference to Christ in his second coming in some ways, but this is the most obvious direct reference in the Old Testament that the New Testament writers grab hold of and use in their writings. Jesus himself, first in the Olivet Discourse, in that wonderful part of it, verses 29 through 31, that we like to refer to so often. He says in verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, stars will fall from heaven, the powers of heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, Daniel 7:13, with power and great glory, because he's the cloud rider and he's God. So when he rides on the chariots of the clouds, it's going to be with power and great glory. Then he will send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. They will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Properly understood, Matthew 24:29 through 31 answers a lot of important questions about the return of Christ, the timing of it, the power of it, the glory of it. And then what I referred to earlier from Daniel 7:13 is in Matthew 26, when Jesus is in front of the Sanhedrin at the beginning of his various trials before his death. Matthew 26 and verse 63, when they made charges against him, it says, but Jesus kept silent. The high priest answered and said to him, I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Well, he did. He answered it in the affirmative. He connected himself to that Son of Man character in Daniel 7:13. This is a resounding, yes, I am that person that the prophet Daniel spoke about. And I was in heaven and I approached my Father, approached the Ancient of Days, and to me was given a kingdom and I'm going to rule in it forever. So, yes, I am the Messiah. That's why they reacted like they did. Jesus said to him, it is as you said. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Daniel 7:13. Then the high priest tore his clothes, saying, he has spoken blasphemy, because he connected himself. And they said he is deserving of death. To connect yourself to that person described in Daniel 7:13 was to say that you were God, you are there on the throne next to the Father, and that you're going to come back on the clouds with power and great glory. And they understood what he meant. That's why they reacted so strongly. Then in Acts chapter 1, at his ascension, we pick up the next reference to this, Acts 1 and 9. Now, when he had spoken these things while they watched, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. That's an interesting picture, isn't it? While they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, who also said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing up into heaven? The same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will so come in like manner. Well, how was he taken up? In a cloud. How's he going to come back? In the clouds, as you saw him go into heaven. And then we look at 1 Thessalonians, that famous passage about the rapture and resurrection, that pre-trib rapture people love to use this as their proof text, which really is puzzling because there is no time stamp factor. There is nothing in this passage that places this event in a pre-tribulation time setting. You look at the particulars of it, tie it to some of the Old Testament verses we already read, where there's loud voices and trumpets and shouts, clouds and all these things, power and great glory, that can only be applied to a post-tribulation coming of Christ, that kind of language. But we'll read verse 16, 1 Thessalonians 4. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up. That's where we get the word rapture, together with them. So that's the together idea, the coming of Christ and our gathering together to him in 2 Thessalonians 2:1. It's a together gathering of the alive and the dead. With them in the clouds, because that's where he is, to meet the Lord in the air. Thus we shall always be with the Lord. Nothing is said there about a U-turn back into heaven. The action word is a descent of Christ. Nothing is said about the descent stopping. So we meet him and then we come with him to the earth. That's the main action word. There's nothing said about upward or ascent or going back or changing course. Nothing like that. Nothing implied in that at all. In Revelation chapter 1 and verse 7, and this kind of sets the stage for the entire book of Revelation. Behold, he is coming with clouds. Every eye will see him. Well, if it's a pre-tribulation, people say, it's going to be invisible, it's going to be secret, it's going to be quiet, it's going to be like a thief or whatever they say. But his cloud coming is going to be visible to everyone. He is coming with clouds, and every eye will see him, even they who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn because of him. Even so, amen. So that's an important verse to kind of set things straight. And then we go to 14:14. So I hope you see that this idea of the cloud aspect of the coming of Christ is pretty straightforward and simple. Really not a lot to be confusing, I wouldn't think. 14:14, then I looked, and behold, a white cloud. And on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, a Daniel 7:13 reference again, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, thrust in your sickle and reap. The time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. And that is the resurrection rapture, especially, of the book of Revelation. It's not chapter 4, verse 1, when John was taken up. It's chapter 14, verses 14 through 16. And that's the cloud coming of Christ, is in a post-tribulation setting. So that's it on this. It's enough to give you a clear idea. Hope it encourages you to study further and to look more deeply at this. And we will be on to other sessions shortly. God bless.